Hey everybody, it's Pastor Ray. Welcome to Refuel. It's Tuesday. We're in Genesis chapter 1, and we're basically, here's the theme, okay? If I get my theology of creation right, it gets my view of everything else right. Yesterday, we talked about this. What are you supposed to do with your life? God created, and when you're living your life to create things, you have passion, purpose, and significance, okay? Today, I want to read you a verse. Here we go. God created the world. It was good. And then the summary statement is this. God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God, He created them, male and female, He created them. And I unpacked this at Bayside this weekend, and I wanted you to see what we had to say because it's an amazing development, and if we get this right, it could change everything about how our country feels to everybody in this country. Check this out. 16 months ago, I got a phone call from a great church in Southern California in the Palm Springs area called Southwest Church. And so I get a phone call from them. It's a Thursday night, and the chairman of the board of the church says, this is an emergency. Can you come down here this weekend and speak? And I said, no, because I'm already slated to speak up here. He goes, can you change that? And I said, what's up? And he said, nobody knows this yet that's in our church, and this weekend in all 4 of our services, we're going to have to get up and announce to our congregation that we asked your pastor to resign. So talked to my wife, prayed about it, and God said go. And one of the reasons God said go is this: I had the perfect message from God for these people because we had preached it here the week before. And the theme of the message, I went in there, and after they made the announcement, people are angry or crying or relieved on some of their part. And I just stood in front of them and I said, I'm really, really, really sorry, but I have a message from God for you today. Because the previous week at Bayside, the entire message had been on this: God is working even when it looks like God's not working. God is working even when it doesn't look like God is working. That makes sense? And people were crying, they were relieved. And I told them, hey, look, when you go through tough times, you run to your family, not away. So stay in your church, run to your church family. And what happened is this: after that service, they met with me. The board said, can we meet with you? I met with them. They said, can you quit Bayside and come down and be our pastor? And I said, no, I like them more than I like you. But I said, with Kurt here and Andrew here and all the incredible folks we have, I'm more freed up. I can come down there. And I actually became, like 16 months ago, their part-time interim senior pastor. And job 1 was to get the church healthy. Okay, and so the staff came around, the church got healthy, we got back to the Bible, all this kind of stuff. And then what happened is, I went, good, now let's find the next pastor. And I gave them a name, and I said, the guy I think you ought to look at is a guy named Ricky Jenkins. Okay? Ricky is a world-class African-American Christian leader. He's in Memphis at a church called Fellowship Church. He is a great Bible teacher, a great guy, married to a stunning, really great individual. Matter of fact, I think we have a picture of Ricky and his family. That's Ricky and his family. Just a really neat guy, really good Bible teacher. Anybody here know Albert Tate? They're cousins, okay, from the same church, okay? And so he's a lot like Albert Tate, and he's a brilliant theologian. He's getting a PhD from Trinity Divinity School, where I used to teach, okay? And I said, I think you ought to have I said, I would pursue Ricky Jenkins. He'd be perfect for this place. And I left the meeting, and somebody called me the next day and said, well, who's going to be contacting Ricky? And they said, well, nobody. And I said, why? And they said, well, because he's black. And I went, wait a second. And then they went on to explain, we just feel like there aren't a lot of African Americans out here, and so he probably wouldn't want to come. And I said, whoa, wouldn't we let him make that call? Okay? And so I said, I put his name back in. And they called him, and about 3 months ago, he came out, he and April, this is his wife April, he came out and preached, and he killed it. And so he became the candidate for this church. And then 2 weeks ago on Sunday night, I flew down to the church And I went out. By the way, if you're wondering, what is this church like? I got a couple pictures. Here's a shot of this church from the outside. Okay, it's an amazing, amazing place, okay? Here's a shot of the inside during worship. And by the way, God restored this church. Attendance is back up, giving's back up, it's healthy and God honoring. And then here's what Bayside does to it when we have Thrive there, okay? And wreck the church. And so what happened is we gathered in that worship center 2 weeks ago on Sunday night, and I flew down and I interviewed Ricky and April, and we let people in the church ask any question they wanted. They emailed them all in or texted them in, and I asked them questions for about an hour. And then I had heard through the grapevine that there were a couple people in the church that were going, you know, I just don't know about having an African-American Christian leader as my pastor. And one or two people in that church, I heard through the grapevine, were upset that it was a mixed marriage, black guy and a white girl. And so I went, my job is to deliver a healthy church to this guy. So we're up there, 1,000 people in the auditorium, and I'm interviewing them, and so I turned to them and I said, now, I want to bring up a sensitive subject. I said, you're an African-American leader. This is a primarily Caucasian church, and you're married, you have a mixed marriage. And I looked right at them and said, have you guys ever experienced discrimination from Christians in the church, either about you being black or your marriage being a mixed marriage? And they answered that in a very classy way. And then I went, now I'm going to talk about this. So I said, I want to say some things to us as a church. And I looked right at Southwest and I said, if any of you in here are concerned and you're going, I don't know about being pastored by an African-American world-class Christian leader, or I'm uncomfortable with a mixed marriage, I just said, would you please come see me afterwards? Because I would like to lead you to Christ, because you can't possibly be a Christian, okay? And that was 2 weeks ago. Last Sunday, my phone blew up. The church voted to call Ricky Jenkins, and check this out, the vote was 99.6% overwhelming positive vote. And Ricky and April will be moving there in January, and he will be the pastor, and they will be the pastor couple in this church, okay? Which means this church just might look like heaven is gonna look instead of the divided country that we live in today. People, Christians, and America need to get our view of everybody from Genesis chapter 1, okay? Because in Genesis chapter 1, it says every single human being of every nationality and race, they're all created in the image of God and all equal, and the ground is level at the cross. That make sense?